United States and Iran ended talks on Friday with, quote, some but not conclusive progress on nuclear negotiations. But the countries still appear far apart, with the U.S. saying Iran cannot be allowed to enrich uranium for civilian use. That's a red line for the Iranians. The talks took place in Rome, where our Chris Livesay joins us now. And Chris, that's a pretty big deal, pretty big thing to be far apart on. So what about middle ground? Is there any to be found here?
Well, indeed. I mean, the hope, of course, is they must be holding these talks for some reason. I mean, the broadest stroke answer would be for Iran to roll back this nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. But even that appears to be too little, too late for the Trump administration, now adopting this harder line, also saying that all options remain on the table if Iran refuses to dismantle its nuclear program, even military intervention. Maurice?
Chris, what about the concern with where Iran's nuclear program currently stands? How close are they to actually building a bomb? Do we have any real sense of that?
Dangerously close, according to the IAEA. That's the International Nuclear Watchdog. If Iran wanted to build a nuclear bomb right now, according to that group, it would only take a matter of months, possibly weeks.
It feels like we've seen this movie before. Other countries, similar situations. Think about North Korea here. How might the lessons from North Korea shape how the world deals with Iran now?
And North Korea is that cautionary tale par excellence. It has only pursued a nuclear program over the decades, and as a result, it has been able to cling to power. And if you compare that to Ukraine, for instance, which inherited a nuclear arsenal when the Soviet Union collapsed, it handed those weapons over in exchange for security guarantees, which ultimately amounted to very little when Russia invaded. Ukraine was exposed without that nuclear deterrent anymore. So the big concern is that Iran is going to look at those two examples and say, I'd rather be North Korea than Ukraine.
All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who our land is true from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025, Missile Monday. And I have this article from CBS News. And it says, Iran has increased its stockpile of near weapons grade uranium, nuclear watchdog says. So I'm just going to go into this article a little bit. I'm read a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And I won't read the whole thing. I'll link it in the description box. And it says, Iran has further increased its stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons grade levels. A confidential report by the United Nations Nuclear Watchdog said Saturday, and called on Tehran to urgently change course and comply with the agency's probe. The report comes at a sensitive time as Tehran and Washington have been holding several rounds of talks in the past weeks over a possible nuclear deal that President Trump is trying to reach. The report by the Vienna-based International Atomic Energy Agency, which was seen by the Associated Press and CBS News, says that as of Saturday, May 17th, Iran has amassed 900.8 pounds of uranium enriched up to 60%. That's an increase of 294.9 pounds, or almost 50%, since the IAEA's last report in February. The 60% enriched material is a short, technical step away from weapons grade levels of 90%. A report in February put this stockpile level at 605.8 pounds. There was no immediate comment from Tehran on the new IAEA report. The IAEA report raised a stern warning, saying that Iran is now the only non-nuclear state to produce such material, something the agency said was of serious concern. Approximately 92.5 pounds of 60% enriched uranium is theoretically enough to produce one atomic bomb. If enriched further to 90%, according to the watchdog, the IAEA report, a quarterly also estimated that as of May 17th, Iran's overall stockpile of enriched uranium, which includes uranium enriched to lower levels, stood at 20,387.4 pounds. That's an increase of 2,101.4 pounds since February's report. While safeguarded enrichment activities are not forbidden in and of themselves, the fact that Iran is the only non-nuclear weapon state in the world that is producing and accumulating uranium enriched to 60% remains a matter of serious concern, which has drawn international attention given to potential proliferation implications, the report states. In a statement provided to CBS News Saturday night, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said that Steve Witkoff, U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, has sent a detailed and acceptable proposal to Iran. President Trump has made it clear that Iran can never obtain a nuclear bomb, Leavitt said. Special Envoy Witkoff has sent a detailed and acceptable proposal to the Iranian regime, and it's in their best interest to accept it. Out of respect for the ongoing deal, the administration will not comment on details of the proposal to the media. So again, I know you pretty much have, which I'll state it because, I actually stand corrected, because in my last video I said that Iran is, now a nuclear armed nation, but they're not, but they're well on their way to becoming, a nuclear armed nation, because again, just like it says in this article, that they're, enriching, their uranium. And if they get it to 90%, then they'll be able to produce, an atomic bomb, ultimately, a missile, because again, as we know or should know that, Iran is allies with Russia. So if, Iran, manages to build its own nuclear arsenal, then, it's not looking good for the U.S. It's already not looking good, with all these other nations that are against America and their particular weapons that they have, man. Again, all of these nations are going to come up against this place, because this is the time that we're in, man. We're in a time of war, No, I won't read the rest. Again, I'll leave it in the description box for those that want to, check this out. But again, man, it's a very serious time that we're in, man. You still have these nations that are gearing up, for war. So I'll start with that. The book of Joel, chapter 3, and verse 9. It says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong." And indeed, man, you clearly see that this is the case, with Iran, really, all of these other nations that didn't have, the technology that America once had, which was, these nukes, atomic bombs at first, then, eventually evolved into, nuclear missiles. They don't have to fly over a particular area and drop it, It could be launched from one end of the earth, to the other simply with a push of a button, and Iran is doing exactly that. They're exhausting their resources into, building their nuclear arsenal, because again, Iran is just one of the many countries that wants to take America down. They can sit here and try to have peace talks or try to talk Iran out of, developing their own weapons. But ultimately, if it's biblical prophecy, nothing is going to stop them from, doing what they're trying to do, which is to build, their own nuclear arsenal, because they're clearly or currently 9 nuclear armed nations, There are 9. So you have Russia, you have America, China, North Korea, the UK, France, Israel. You have, if I'm not mistaken, I may have to look it up again. I think Australia, I think they have weapons, and the last one I want to say, not Germany, because Germany is looking, to get help from either France or, the UK. And if I didn't say it, North Korea, I may have said it. But either way it goes, those are the current, nuclear armed nations. India, I may have not have said India, but, there are currently 9 nuclear armed nations, and not America, but Iran is well on its way to becoming a 10th, So I'm going to jump to the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, and verse 5. And it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be a burning and fuel of fire." And right, man, this isn't going to be a traditional war like ancient wars were fought, man, with hand-to-hand combat, guerrilla warfare, where, men would, charge each other, in the center of a battlefield, man. Having weapons of war, swords, spears, shields, bow and arrows, these particular weapons of war, going at it. This war is primarily going to be fought with these nuclear missiles, man. This is why they're being created. They're being created for this time, man. These weapons are being created to be used in this current time that we're in. And I always have to make mention that, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other. There is going to be a ground war, but primarily this war is going to be fought with these nukes, because the end all be all is going to be America being destroyed, So I'm going to jump to chapter 54 in Isaiah, and I'm going to give verse 16. It says, "Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy." And right, man, the modern day smith being these scientists and physicists that are behind developing these nuclear weapons, because what is a smith? A blacksmith, that's one that deals in creating weapons of war, and these scientists and physicists are the modern day blacksmiths, A prime example of this would be, Robert Oppenheimer himself. He would be a modern day, smith. He's dead now, but still, he will be a modern day smith, man, because he helped, bring the nukes, to existence. or the Lord, gave them, these particular men, that knowledge to bring forth these weapons, for this particular time, So now I'm going to jump to chapter 13, Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 4. And it says, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the battle. It's like the Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And right, man, that's exactly what's going to happen. These particular nations, they're all going to get together and aid in that destruction of America. Because as we know, the primary nation, as far as, as World War III goes, the main nation that is going to be that driving force to take America down is going to be Russia, along with the help from, China, North Korea, all of Russia's allies and even America's allies are going to turn on her, and they're going to shoot their missiles over here as well, and just like I may mention that these nukes are going to be shot from one end of the earth and hit the other. So if a nuke is launched from Russia, trust and believe it has a specific target here in America, because all of Russia's nukes are aimed here in America, at particular major cities and states, but just like it says, to destroy the whole land. This whole land is going to be destroyed, man, from east to west to north to south, man. This entire land mass is going to be burned, and that's what the lake of fire is. That is spoken of in Revelation chapter 19 and chapter 20. That's the lake of fire, America being burned by that nuclear fire. It's not hell. Hell is just, a condition that is played out on earth, or ultimately the grave. That's all that means. Just in case anyone gets confused, that's all, hell means, or that's all hell is, a condition, or the grave, and the lake of fire is America being burned. So now I'm going to jump to Revelation chapter 17 and verse 16. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and the whore is America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And right, man, this is going into America's allies, those nations that are a part of, the NATO and the EU. They're going to turn on this place, man, and they're going to aid in that destruction, and they're going to shoot their missiles over here as well, because again, that great horde that is spoken of in the book of Revelation is talking about America, aka Babylon the Great. This place is destined for destruction. But as we know, particular prophecies have to take place before this destruction can take place. And one of those main prophecies being the mass implementation of the mark of the beast, which is spoken of in Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 on down. That prophecy still has to come to pass. The time of Jacob's trouble, which is still approaching, has to come to pass. But again, that main prophecy being the mark of the beast being made mandatory before this war and the destruction takes place. So I'm just going to grab a couple more and it'll be it. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 11 and verse 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And right, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to say in Revelation chapter 9, it also mentions, the first woe, and the second woe. But, those woes, they're talking about, wars, man, because what does woe mean? Woe means destruction. World War I, came to pass, World War II, came to pass, and now we're vastly approaching this third world war. Hence the reason why it says the second war is past, and behold, the third war cometh quickly. Those that have the eyes to see, you can clearly see that, this war is heating up. Right now it's just, it's a cold war. It's a buildup, before ultimately, it's going to become a hot war, man. And once that happens, then, we know that it's, it's over for this place, So I'm going to get the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verse 1 says, "And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth," which the 4 winds, well, these are 4 little angels. And the 4 winds, that's, the destruction, because again, there's an appointed time for when this destruction, World War III, aka the day of the Lord, is going to take place. It says that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living power. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, right? Because they have that, that power. These 4 particular angels, once, that time comes, they're going to unleash, these winds, which is the destruction. Verse 3, saying, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads." Right, and that's another thing, man. Once the elect is sealed, the mark of the beast has been made mandatory, and the majority of the people here, especially in America, get it. All hell breaks loose, and America and Russia are directly at war with each other. Then that destruction is going to take place. So I'm going to end it with the book of Revelation, chapter 9, and verse 15. It says, "And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men." And verse 16 on down is just giving a very vivid description of how these missiles are going to look, the warheads in particular, But just like it says, there's a particular day, a particular hour, month, day, and a year when this war is going to take place, and is vastly approaching, And again, it says, "For to slay the third part of men," because you have 3 classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which today are known as the biblical Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. Excuse me, Slakia. And you have the sons of men, which would be, the heathen nations. And you have the sons of the wicked, which would be the nation of Edom, the so-called white man. And that's who this destruction is for. It's for Esau, because he came into power by way of violence, and he's going to be taken out of power by way of violence, Because what was his blessing? Pursuant to Genesis chapter 27 and 40, the sword, man. And what is his ultimate sword? These nukes, So the Lord gave this man the technology, that is capable of destroying the earth, He gave this man the knowledge to build this technology, ultimately to take himself out, because again, those Russians are Edomites, man. Obviously not all of them, because again, we have to remember our people are scattered, throughout the earth. But again, those Russian Edomites over there, man, they're not playing. They're going to take this place down. So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, where I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say Shalom.